Muted.
So anyway, thanks for taking the time. I'm going to spend about 30 minutes here, maybe 40 minutes going through some of this. This is a topic I've been waiting to talk about for a few years, and let me give you a little background on that. So MESA, was with MESA for about 10 years. MESA won a couple of Baldrige Awards, and right after 2012, the second Baldrige Award, I was talking with an organization that I used to be the CFO for, and I said, in a very progressive organization, I said, hey, if you guys, interested in a Baldrige journey, just let me know. Be glad to help. And the guy that was the president, who was a good friend of mine, by the way, says to me, well, the day that we do Baldrige is the day I quit, is the day I leave. And so, I guess as long as I've been involved with Baldrige, I've really looked at Baldrige really just from a common sense standpoint of how you run your organization, or maybe how you should run your organization. Maybe not everybody does it. So I don't look at it as doing Baldrige. And so, and I've heard people use that term from time to time, doing Baldrige. And so I just never understood that. Now, I'm a financial guy by background, so I'm a guy who's looking for results. I'm not looking for anything too flashy, cutting edge type stuff. I'm just looking for results. So when I look at the Baldrige criteria, I look at something as a way to produce results. So, I thought about his comment, and I thought, well, you're probably quote unquote doing Baldrige every day, but you just don't recognize it. And so ever since that time, I've heard people say that we don't do Baldrige, or we want to do Baldrige. And so I know that means different things. Maybe that means I want to be in the awards process. Maybe it means that. But doing Baldrige, I think, as I look at the Baldrige criteria, something that we do every day. So if you're familiar with Baldrige, we'll talk about, you'll see some things today that probably you've seen before, hopefully in a little bit different context. If you're not familiar with Baldrige, great. You're familiar with your organization or other organizations and what you all do there. And so hopefully we're going to take the Baldrige criteria and put it into some pretty common sense terms today. And hopefully as we go through these, you can relate to those. You can say, hey, yeah, we do those things in our organization. And so, again, not a matter of whether you do Baldrige or you don't do Baldrige. It's a matter of how well you do them and are you getting any better at it. So that's how we're going to look at it today. Couple of things before we start. As you know, if you've tried to talk to me, you can hear me, but I can't hear you. I've got everybody on mute just to manage the background noise. I'll open it up here at the end. If you got any questions, feel free to chime in at that point. There's the little chat button at the bottom of your GoToMeeting screen. You can also send some questions that way, and we'll look at those questions too. But send those my way. I'd be glad to answer those. So at any rate, you got your lunch, you got something to drink, and so sit back and enjoy that, and let's see how this goes today. So this is the Baldrige criteria. If you're familiar with Baldrige, you've seen this before. If you're not familiar with Baldrige, this is just the Baldrige folks' way of putting the criteria in context. And they would say, hey, all these things, all these categories of the criteria really work together in this systematic way of looking at an organization. Now, from my vantage point, I look at this a little bit different maybe than the Baldrige folks do, but maybe we look at it the same, we're using different terms. And so when I look at this, I say, the job of leadership is to produce results and a certain type of results. So produce purposeful results is what I would say the job of leadership is. I mean, that's what we do as leaders, right? We lead people to a destination. And so if you're not doing that, then you're probably not really a leader. You might be a supervisor or something like that, but if you're not leading folks to results, then you're really not in a leadership position, because that's what we do as leaders. And so I look at the Baldrige criteria and I say, well, that makes perfect sense. If I go from leadership to results, that's what we're all about. Along the way, if I'm going to produce results, I'm probably going to do that through customers. I haven't run into an organization yet that doesn't have customers. So we all have them. And if we want to produce results in our organization, we're going to do that through our customers. We're probably going to have a strategy for doing that with our customers. And whatever we're going to do for our customers, whatever that strategy is based on for that set of customers, we're going to do it through people and operations. So we're going to do it through a workforce and our processes. And that is the Baldrige criteria, in a nutshell. So we can end it today. We can end it right now and say, hey, that was it. Thanks for coming. That's the overview of the criteria, but we're going to go a little bit deeper than that. So I look at the criteria and I say, hey, there's really a results chain, and I'm going to use that term in our presentation today to walk through the criteria. But think about the criteria as a results chain. And again, if you're in a leadership position, what you're doing there is trying to produce results, a certain set of results, not random acts of results, but results on purpose. And so that's what we're trying to get to. To get there, we're going to do it through customers with a certain strategy. So we're going to have a strategy to do it with a certain group of customers, not all customers, a certain group of customers. We're going to make that happen through people, and people are going to work through processes or operations, and that's how we're going to produce results. Along the way, we're going to have some measurements. We're going to have some things that we measure. Even if it's just basic measures, we're going to have some things that we measure. We're going to have some analysis to that. We're probably going to manage some knowledge along the way. So again, we're going to walk through the criteria in that context. We're going to put it into that results chain and kind of see how these things fit together. But that is the Baldrige criteria. That's in a really high-level overview how it works. So the other thing that I want to keep in mind is it's not a matter of if you're doing it. It's a matter of how well you're doing it and are you improving. But it's also a matter of where you're at in terms of maturing, improving. And so there's a large percentage of organizations out there that I'm going to say are kind of at a fundamental level. I mean, and we'll walk through what that means, but kind of a basic level. We're handling the nuts and bolts. I mean, this is we're not really maturing or improving past that, but we can be really good at a fundamental level and still produce some pretty good results. At some point, those organizations who start to mature and improve, they become purposeful about what they're doing. They're not just doing it randomly. They're not out there trying to do it for everybody. They get really purposeful about what they're doing. And that's a different level. You mature from that, you evolve from that into an organization that really is starting to learn. So they're purposeful and all that, but they're really starting to learn about who they are and who their customers are and who their employees are and what their processes are, really becoming learning organizations. That's a different level. And finally, you get to an organization that's just an innovative company, an innovative organization, lots of agility. I mean, they're really in command of what they're doing, and that's kind of at the highest level, if you will. And so these aren't Baldrige-sponsored categories of levels here, but we're going to use them just for the purposes of our conversation today. And so when I say, hey, you're really doing Baldrige, you just may not recognize it, well, that really depends on, again, what level you are in terms of maturing and improving. So keep that in mind as we go through. We're going to talk about that quite a bit today. Okay, so here's our results chain. We got leadership. We're going to go through. We're going to develop a strategy with some customers. We're going to get those things done through a workforce and operations to produce results. And along the way, we're going to have some measurement and analysis and knowledge management. Now, at a really fundamental level, most organizations out there that you talk to that say, hey, I don't do Baldrige, at the same time will tell you that, well, we're really interested in producing financial results or maybe marketplace results. So we're either really interested in making money or we're interested in growing market share. And so at least at that point, you're still doing Baldrige, right? I mean, because those are two Baldrige criteria items, 751, 752. Those are, and so most every organization I know of has some type of financial or marketplace driver out there from them. And if you think you don't, that's okay, but you really do. So everybody out here has financial market results. Now, if I talk to an education institution or a healthcare institution, they would say, oh, well, we're not so much financially driven, we're not so much market driven. We're all about the student learning, or we're all about patient care. And I'm okay with that. So make that your primary thing. So you're interested in student learning or patient care. Great. Well, if you're doing that, you're doing Baldrige, because Baldrige is interested in that too. And we would say that's a product or a service result that you're trying to achieve. You're trying to help students learn. You're healing people out there in healthcare. Even for those for-profit organizations that are interested in financial and market results, they still may be very proud of the product or service that they provide, and so they're very product or service driven. So at a really basic fundamental level, the things that most organizations, whether they're in continuous improvement or excellence or not, the thing that they're interested in are still Baldrige type things. So Baldrige is really for those organizations, because Baldrige is about producing financial results and marketplace results and product and service results and student learning and patient care. Now, at a fundamental level, and you can see that I'm going to end up using up all of my animation tricks that I have in my toolbox throughout this thing, and so if you get dizzy, just stop watching the screen for a minute and that'll go away. But again, at a fundamental level, I'm going to give you credit for having a commitment to legal and ethical behavior, because if you don't have that at a real fundamental level, well, you're probably not in business too long. You probably don't exist too long. And so to some degree, you have some legal and regulatory results, right? Even if those results are, well, I woke up today and I wasn't in jail, and so nobody had to bail me out of jail today. That's my key indicator right there. I got to come back to work and open up my place today. And so, if you're doing that, you're doing Baldrige. I'm also going to give you credit at a really fundamental level that if you're running an organization, you at some level, again, it's a matter of how well you're doing it. You're out there to promote and ensure ethical behavior, and that's a Baldrige category, right? We want to make sure that what we're doing is ethical, and as you know, if you've been working at any point, any amount of time at all, that ethical type stuff, integrity, that's the thing that can take you down. Ask Enron, ask WorldCom, no longer around because of ethics. And so if you're doing those things, you probably have some kind of indicator out there. And even if that indicator is, look, I didn't wake up this morning and have the name of my organization plastered across the front page of the newspaper in a disparaging way. That's my indicator. I got up and we weren't being blasted in the media today. I'm for ethics. And so, look, if you're doing that, you're doing Baldrige. So don't look now, but you're doing Baldrige. I'd also say that most organizations at a fundamental level, if they're not really concerned about leadership, they're concerned about governance, aren't they? Because they're making rules, they're making policies, they're making sure that they got financial resources available to do what they want to do. Because if they can't do that, well, then they're not going to be around very long. So I'm going to say at a fundamental level that most folks out there are ensuring some type of responsible governance, and they're making sure that they got financial and other resources to support whatever plans that they have out there, even if those plans are just to go sell some stuff to a lot of people and make a lot of money. Well, if you're going to do that, that means you got to have something to sell. So you're gonna determine some product and service offerings. You're gonna figure out what it is you're selling. You're probably gonna go try to sell some stuff to people. And if you're in the sales game, a lot of times that's building a relationship, whether it's a business-to-business type thing or a business-to-consumer. You're still trying to build a relationship to some degree with folks. So you're out there building and managing customer relationships. You're probably also going to give your customers a way to seek information and get support. Maybe it's a website. Maybe you got an 800 number. Maybe that's a direct sales force that's out on the road for you. But some way you're giving your customers the ability to seek information and support. And, if you've got any number of customers at all, if you've been around any length of time at all, you're going to manage customer complaints. Even if that way to manage that is you listen to it, you hung up the phone, and then you went on your way. You managed it, you just didn't manage it very well. And so If you're doing those things, hey, don't look now, but your Baldrige is showing, because all those things are Baldrige type things. You're probably going to need some people. So if you got customers, you're probably going to want to satisfy those customers, or at least deliver the product or service that you're in the business of delivering. And so you're going to have to assess some capability and capacity needs. So you're going to have to figure out, hey, do I have enough people? Do I have the right numbers of people? Do they have the right skill sets? And so even if you're not in the developing your workforce phase, you're still interested in, do I have enough people with the right skills? Do I have enough people that can make this widget? Do I have enough salespeople? Do I have enough people to answer the phones? Can that person answer the phone, which we need to know. So you're going to have to go recruit and hire and place and retain new members from time to time. Now, how often you do that kind of depends on you, kind of depends on your industry. If you're a great organization and you're not growing too much, then maybe you don't do that too much. If you got really poor leadership, you're probably doing that quite a bit because people don't want to stay there and work for you. But you're probably recruiting and hiring and placing and retaining new members. Hey, that's Baldrige stuff. I hear you. That's all Baldrige stuff. And you're probably going to have to pay those folks. They're probably not going to come to work for you because you're a great guy or a great gal. Probably going to want to pay them. They're probably going to want some health insurance, some other benefits, and so you're going to support those folks with services and benefits and policies. Once you hire them, you probably have some way to organize and manage them. You got to corral those cats, right, and keep them all in the same pen there. So you're going to organize and manage the workforce, and just by law, you're going to have to keep them safe. You're going to have to provide a safe operating environment. You're going to have to ensure some workforce health and security to some degree. So you're going to have to do that. That's a law. That's regulation. You got to do that. So if you're doing all that, well, don't look now, but you're doing Baldrige. Now, measurement and analysis, you may not measure anything in your organization. You may not analyze any piece of information in your organization. You may not manage any knowledge in your organization, but because of the world we live in, you can't get away from technology. And so you're going to have some hardware and software that's reliable and secure and user-friendly. Otherwise, nobody will use it. You're going to get hacked into. Nobody operates on a big cheap tablet these days. So you're going to have some technology out there, and you're going to make sure that folks can use it. You're going to make sure that some data and information is available either to your customers or to your employees who have to do that work, but you're going to make sure that data information is available. And there's probably some confidential stuff, some stuff out there that you don't want everybody to see. Certainly you don't want your customers to see what it costs you to buy or deliver a service. If you're in the healthcare industry or the education industry, there's patient and student information that you can't share. Just by law, you can't do that. And so you're going to have to find a way to keep that secure. So if you're doing all these things at a fundamental level, which most organizations would fit into this level, don't look now, but your Baldrige is showing, because all those things that you're doing are Baldrige things. So it's not something that Baldrige came up with. It's that they looked at organizations and said, what happens in an organization, in every organization, by the way, in every organization these things happen. It's not a question of whether they do or whether they don't. It's how well you're doing them, and are you getting any better at them. And so if you're doing those things at a fundamental level, you're doing Baldrige. Now, at this level, you're probably also interested in controlling the overall cost of your operations, particularly if you're one of those businesses who is primarily interested in financial results. And so, if you're in healthcare or education, maybe that's not a primary driver for you, but probably most likely you're interested in controlling those to some degree because somebody's telling you to. And if you're doing that, you're going to need some data and information to tell you whether or not you're doing that. And you're probably going to want that data and information to be of pretty high quality. You want good information so you can manage your business. If you're in that type of business that has suppliers, which most of us are to some degree, you're managing a supply chain at that point. And you've got some supply chain management results. Even if those results are numbers of POs, numbers of dollars spent, numbers of times I was late with that supplier, or every time I think of that supplier, it just gives me a stomachache because they make me sick. because they don't do a good job. So it could be that. So supply chain management indicators out there, you could have those. So fundamental level, you're doing these things. Every organization does them. Every organization does these things. No, there is not an organization out there that does not do these things. If you want to run across one, send me their name. There's probably some type of prize I'm going to give you if you can find one that doesn't do these things right here, or at least should, because if they don't do some of these things, they're going to go out of business pretty soon. Now, if you're doing those things and you're doing them well, you're in the top 50% of all organizations out there in terms of high performance. At this level, if you're doing these things, that automatically, and you're doing them well, that automatically puts you in the top 50% of all organizations. That's how good you are. Or maybe that's a sad state of how some organizations are out there. Okay, top 50%, fundamental level. Now, as we move up the pyramid here, I'm making the assumption that we're getting better at these things right here. So as we move up into being purposeful, I'm also assuming that we're getting better at the fundamentals, and so we're starting to add some depth. But at this level, those are all Baldrige things. Okay, let's move on. Now, at some point, you move past the fundamentals, right? And you start to become purposeful about what you're doing. And the reason for that is somebody in that organization, probably a leader, an owner, a stockholder, whomever, wants to build an organization that's successful not only now, but in the future. And so at a fundamental level, hey, we're not really thinking about the future. We're just doing our thing, getting it done, keeping on. But at some point, somebody says, hey, maybe we ought to think about being around for a while. And so you start to build an organization that's successful now and in the future. And that just happens to be a Baldrige thing too. So this is probably where you start to see a lot of folks start to set vision and values and mission statements. I mean, that's a cool thing to do. And so, hey, if we're going to be around for the future, we might as well paint the picture of what that future looks like. And that's what you see when you're setting vision and mission, and then values end up being what we're all about. Let's put something to those that are going to endure. And so, you know, you're looking forward to being around for a while. Might as well set some things out there that are going to be around for a while with you. About this time, folks that are doing that, you depend on whether they're more people or process oriented. You start to put in performance appraisal system. You're starting to give your people performance appraisals, defining some expectations for them, sitting down with them every once in a while and talking to them about how that performance is going. Give them some coaching. And so you're typically doing that at that level. Or it could be in the operations. Maybe on this side, this is where you start to see, hey, let's go improve our processes. We don't know which processes yet. We don't know how we're going to do it. We heard about Lean. We heard about Six Sigma. We heard about whatever. But you know what? We're in the process improvement game. And so we're starting to improve our work processes to reduce costs or reduce errors and things like that. We probably also start to think about emergency preparedness for our hardware and software. We think, hey, you know, probably is a good idea if we have some backups. You know, if that server goes down, maybe we need to have another one to do it. Or let's just have our server offsite. So those are all the things that people start doing when they start being purposeful. And if you're there in your organization, you're starting to do some of those things, don't look now what your Baldrige is showing, because those are all Baldrige things. Okay, at some point, you run into this thing called strategic planning. You read about it, you heard about it, everybody is doing it. I was doing strategic planning back in the 70s, and so you know, more kids are bringing it back these days, and so you start to do some strategic planning. And initially, that may just be that we sit down once a year and we just have a list of goals or initiatives that we want to get accomplished. Hey, you know what? We need to put up the new line over there. You know what? We need to develop this curriculum. You know what, we're going to start this new clinic over there. We got some short-term, maybe some long-term action plans at this point, but probably a lot of short-term, one-year things out there, and that's okay. That's a good start. We're starting to do some strategic planning, starting to think about it purposefully. About this time is also when we start to think, hey, you know what, I heard about these customer satisfaction surveys. We should go ask our customers, we should get them to fill out a survey and tell us what they think about it, so that we'll know. And we may not look at it, we may not do anything with it, it may hurt our feelings, I don't know, but this is where you start to see folks start to So to try to determine customer satisfaction, maybe not dissatisfaction, maybe not engagement at this point, certainly customer satisfaction. A lot of surveys, so we got some results out there to prove it. We may also even become concerned about what our workforce is thinking. We're thinking we're going to be around a while. We're thinking we might need a workforce if we're going to be around a while. So hey, what's the workforce think? Let's do a satisfaction survey to see how they're feeling, and that gives us some workforce engagement or satisfaction results out there as well. The next stage of evolution for you then at this in the purposeful milestone here is that we get past just initiative setting or goal setting in our strategic planning. We actually get down to strategic objectives. You know, what is it that we've got to be really good at to be around for a long time? We're starting to set strategic objectives. We're starting to understand that we need to start collecting and analyzing data for our strategic planning process, right? So it's not just a matter of us sitting around, you know, thinking about how we feel or what we think. We've got some data to back that up, and so we're becoming a lot more data-driven at that point. If you do that in your strategic planning process right now, well, don't look now, but your Baldrige is showing, because that's what Baldrige says you ought to do too. Probably at this point, we're getting better at deploying our action plans. We're not just setting initiatives; we're actually getting them out there. We're getting them done. We're getting good at execution, and so deploying action plans is something that happens. And deployment just means that hey, it's going past the senior leadership. It's going past just the headquarters. It's going past. It's getting into the parts of the organization that it needs to be in. So that's all deployment means. We probably at this point, we're setting strategic objectives. We're starting to become more purposeful. We start to determine what customer groups and market segments we really want to do business with. We're not out there to educate the world. We're out there to educate a certain population of it. We're not out there to heal everybody. We're out there to heal a certain population. We're not out there to sell stuff to everybody. We're starting to hone in on who's our best customer. And so we determine those customer groups and market segments. We're starting to move past just sending out surveys and things like that. We really want to listen to them. We want to interact with them. We want to observe customers so we can obtain some. We're starting to learn about our customers a little bit more, particularly the ones that we want to do business with. And so if you've got those ways of doing it, what would that look like in your organization? Well, in a hospital setting, maybe that's rounding. Could be the same thing in an educational setting. Hey, we're just getting out and we're talking to students. We're talking to parents. We have a parents' night or the open house or the back to school night, and so we're listening to and interacting with customers. Starting to use that voice of the customer a little bit more. So we're getting some feedback. At first we pushed back. You know, they told us some things that we can improve on. We thought we were already perfect, but now we realize, well, maybe we're not. And so we're starting to use that voice of the customer data to make improvements. Certainly starting to listen to it a little bit more. Here's where we move past just doing process improvement or doing continuous improvement, random acts of continuous improvement, where we're starting to get a little bit more purposeful. And so we're starting to define processes. Maybe we're doing some process maps out there. Maybe we're writing stuff down and determining what those processes and requirements really are. So key work process, key support processes, not only just what our manufacturing folks or what our surgeons or what our teachers are doing, but what's the support functions behind that, what's accounting doing, what's administration doing, and things like that. So we're getting a lot more purposeful about our improvement because we're really honing in on what our processes are, and we're starting to get information on process effectiveness and efficiency, which then makes us hungry for measurement. And so here's where we're evolving a little bit more, and we're starting to put some key performance measures out. We're not just setting strategic objectives out there. We actually know how to measure those things at this point. So we got some key performance measures out there. We're starting to make sure in our daily operations of our processes that those are meeting those key product and process requirements. And so that just means that as we're out there, we're doing those things. We're looking at data, you know. Hey, this process, the output of it said this. We should be seeing this. We got some data to tell us that we're doing that. And so we're reviewing those things. We're reviewing our key performance measures and our capabilities. And so, you know, you look at this, and probably a lot of things in this category of stuff right now you do, and that's great. Don't look now, but your Baldrige is showing. We probably also start probably the highest evolution in this area of being purposeful is that we're past workforce satisfaction. We want engagement. We understand that It's not enough to have a satisfied employee. We want an employee that's engaged in our mission, in our vision. We want them on board. We don't want to have to keep pushing them up the hill. We want them marching up the hill with us. And so we're really trying to drive down on what those key drivers of workforce engagement are, because we need people behind our mission. And so as we move up this evolution of high-performing organizations, that's one of the mileposts out there. If you're doing that, great. That's Baldrige stuff. We're also starting to be more concerned about the design of products and processes. We're not just living with the ones we've already had, but we're starting to design how they should be. We're starting to design excellence into them. We're starting to design Six Sigma level quality into them. And so we're becoming more concerned at that point. And we're looking past just today. We can project our future performance. We can project what's going to happen. And so we can make adjustments if we need to. If your organization is doing that, if that sounds like anything familiar to what your organization is doing, you may not call it Baldrige, but it's included in Baldrige. So don't look now what your Baldrige is showing. Now, if you do this stuff really well right here, if you've moved past the fundamentals, you've really started to excel at this purposeful stuff, which, as I look at this list of stuff, a lot of organizations do a lot of these things. There's probably some gaps here that you might look at and say, I really haven't moved past this point because we haven't started doing, X, Y, or Z here. But if you're doing this stuff really well, then that would put you probably in about the top quartile of all organizations out there. You would be among the highest performing organizations out there if you just did this stuff. And so as you look at this stuff, you probably didn't call it Baldrige. You guys don't walk around calling it Baldrige at your place, which is good, because at MESA, 2 Baldrige Awards later, we don't call this stuff Baldrige at our place. But this is stuff that we do that just happens to be included in the Baldrige criteria. You move past being purposeful, and now you're starting to learn, because you're starting to get information, right? You're starting to get data. You got some measurements out there, and you're learning where you're good and where you're not. You're learning where you should put your effort, where you shouldn't put your effort. Something triggers this, and it's usually a leadership thing, because leadership stands up and says, hey, yeah, we went through the purposeful part of this. Now we know that as leaders, we got to lead people through this. And so typically what happens is, and you might see this in your organization, if some of this stuff came before some of the things that you saw in the purposeful category, well, you may not be as effective as this because you haven't reached that level of maturity yet. But something happens here with leadership, and they understand that they're the ones that are driving it. They got everything rises and falls on leadership. Something happens, great. Hey, that's fantastic. We hired the right people to do it. Something happens that wasn't so great. Well, that's our fault. We just didn't plan well. We didn't lead it. So leadership steps up. They start to communicate with and engage all the workforce and key customers. And your leaders probably have a way to do that in your organization. If you are a leader in your organization, you probably do that. You probably communicate with your workforce and customers. You may think about supporting things in your community. Maybe you sponsor a baseball team. Maybe you contribute to United Way. Maybe you have a fundraiser for the food bank, something like that. But you start to support things in your community, because it's starting to become more than just about you at that point. What you're trying to do is foster a culture that's characterized by open communication and high performance, engaged workforce. The workforce, a lot of those folks, they want it to mean something when they come to work, and so supporting communities, having their leaders engage with them, that means something. And so you're trying to foster a culture now, rather than just get things done. Typically have some results in that. So you got some senior leader communication and engagement results out there, even if that's just people telling you that you're great at it or you're really sorry at it. And so you got some results out there. Probably got some workforce climate stuff out there. How are people missing work? Do we have turnover out there? Is it a safe place? So you got some workforce climate results out there. But this learning stage typically kicked off by a leader's realization that they are the ones that are going to have to make this happen. They may even start to evaluate themselves. we typically put in performance review processes, and then the leaders are the ones that end up getting left out of it. They don't do a good job, especially at the senior leadership level, of evaluating themselves. And so here's where we say, okay, well, now we realize as leaders we're the ones that are getting this done. We might as well evaluate our own performance. We're going to hold ourselves accountable, and in the process, we've got some governance accountability measures out there, and that's a great thing to have when your leaders, senior leaders, CEO, and your board have reached that level where they're evaluating their own performance. You know you're onto something. And don't look now, but that's Baldrige. Your Baldrige is showing when you're doing that. That leadership stuff starts to drive some learning and development system. They know they need it for themselves. They know they need to start developing leaders because they recognize that leaders are the ones that are out there, in front of the organization, helping them to get there. And so they put in learning and development systems. And so if you've got those, particularly leadership development ones, that's Baldrige stuff. And so that's included in the criteria. And so you're also managing career progression, because along with workforce engagement, those folks, you realize those folks need to think about the future as well. So where are they headed? And so you start to define some job responsibilities and career ladders and things like that, and start to manage those along the way with your performance review system. If you have those things, you could do it in another way. But if you're doing those things, don't look now, but your Baldrige is showing. Also starting to use information. So you're getting information, you're using findings from performance reviews, and because of that, you're realizing that, hey, in our strategic planning, we've got to have a good balance here. This can't all just be about producing financial results, or this all can't be just about one area. All this stuff works together, right? To produce results, we got to have a strategy for doing that. It's a strategy through customers. We're going to make that happen through our workforce and operations, and that. So we're trying to balance our strategic objectives among competing needs. If you see that in your strategic plan, well, don't look now, but your Baldrige is showing, because that's exactly what Baldrige is asking you to do. You're starting to think about short and long-term performance projections. So not only do you have measures out there for your strategy, but now you're starting to project performance, and that's just a maturity thing right there. And you're starting to recognize that, look, this workforce thing, that's pretty important to me. My people that work for me, we're making things happen through that workforce, and so we've got some key workforce plans that are connected to our strategic objectives. And so if you do that, that's great. That's a Baldrige thing to do. Maybe starting to think about disaster and emergency preparation. So disaster recovery. What happens if the tornado comes through Oklahoma? That never happens to us in Oklahoma, but it could. And so what happens? What's my plan for that? We're thinking more about the future. At some point, you stumble across this thing called benchmarking and comparative data. And so you think, hey, this is a great thing, or you do it like this. Hey, we're at this level. I noticed my competitor is 10 times that. Boy, I thought we were great. We're really not. And so you stumble on this comparative data thing, and that's starting to drive some things in your organization. You start to obtain information on customer satisfaction relative to other organizations. Hey, my customers said 80% of the time they're satisfied with me. I wonder how satisfied they are with my competitors, because if they're 97% satisfied with my competitors, I got a problem, don't I? So we start to obtain some actionable information, maybe even listening to potential customers. Why aren't they doing business with us? What would it take for them to do business with us? You know, when we start to learn from those things, you know, we just think that, well, those aren't the right customers. That's not the right group of students. Oh, well, those patients, yeah, that's really for that other hospital. But we're starting to learn from that. We're starting to listen to those folks and learn. And along the way, we move from being concerned about customer satisfaction to customer engagement, which is a totally different level. And so the same thing with your workforce. We don't want them just satisfied. We want them engaged in what we're doing. And so the same thing is true of your customers. If you're on a mission as an organization, if you've got a vision, want your customers engaged in what you're doing. No higher form of flattery than that. Here's where, at a higher level, we start thinking key work systems. So we're starting to understand this customer thing and what's really going to keep them engaged, and how am I running my organization and balancing needs. And we move from just improving processes to to improving systems. We understand how things move throughout our organization, from the time a customer enters the transaction to the time we deliver to that customer. That's our key work system. We start to understand that. We start to understand which pieces we need to do, which pieces somebody else who does that better needs to do. And so some supplier, some partner does that for us. And so we're not going to do everything. We're great at these things. Somebody else is great at these other things. We're going to let them do it, and we're going to partner up to do that. We start moving from just information to knowledge. We start managing organizational knowledge. I mean, what is organizational knowledge? What do we know about our customers? You know, it's not just information we have on our customers, but what is that telling us? Information from our workforce. If you've got a workforce that depends on people who have been there a long, long time, you want to capture that organizational knowledge, put that down there where it can be replicated, where it can be transferred to somebody else. If you're doing those things, great. Don't look now that your Baldrige is showing, because that's exactly what Baldrige would hope you would be doing. And we might even evolve to being concerned about or addressing public concerns with their products and operations. You know, maybe it's not just a matter of being safe in our place. What are we putting out there? What are we producing in our students? Is it just knowledge, or can they actually be effective in society, in their careers? So we're addressing public concerns at that level. So if you have reached this level, if any of this stuff looks familiar to you, you're doing this stuff, you've evolved past fundamental, you've evolved past purposeful, you're in the learning stage of our model here. Don't look now that your Baldrige is showing, and you are in the top decile of all organizations out there. You are among the best of the best if you are doing these things. So these things, probably at this point, is where some people say, yeah, I don't do Baldrige because I don't do these things. I don't do some of these things, and that's okay. You've done Baldrige up to this point. You just didn't evolve to this level, but you're still doing Baldrige. It's just a matter of how well you're doing it. Okay, so we're in the learning stage. Now we're going to move to the top of the top here, the innovative stage. And maybe this is where folks who look at the Baldrige criteria, they say, you know what, I don't do that Baldrige thing isn't for me, because I don't even know what that stuff is. And that's okay. You've been doing it all along. You've certainly been doing it at the fundamental level. Probably been doing something at the purposeful level. May have eased into the learning level, and you're just too shy to jump into the innovative level, but you're going to get there. The more you go along, the better you get. So maybe some easy things here. You start to share some best practices in your organization. So particularly if you're a multi-site place, or you've got the same operation happening at different places in your organization, sharing best practices. Hey, what's working for you? Maybe among your leaders in their leadership style. What's the best practice for leadership? You know, and so you start to share those things, and that's creating some improvement that you wouldn't necessarily get just by looking at that operation alone. You're not just developing people, you're not just training people, but you're evaluating the effectiveness of those learning and development systems. You know, maybe you even define, hey, here's what I want to add. Maybe you haven't defined that yet. We just knew we need to send people to training, but now you're starting to say, okay, what do they need to learn? What competencies do they need to have? Are we achieving those? How can I see those? And so we've got some workforce and leader development results out there, because we're starting to tie those to actual competencies and behaviors and things like that we want to see. That's probably early signs of being in the innovative state, because you're starting to learn, you're starting to share. Here we're concerned not only with setting strategy and action plans, but are we achieving those? Are we getting those done? Well, how good are we at doing that? How good is our strategic planning process? How good is our execution process? You know, we probably didn't worry about it up to this point because we had one, right? Everybody says you should do strategic planning. We know we need to get things done, but how good is that? Maybe we start to evaluate how good that is, because that's really the vehicle that's driving you forward. We get good at modifying plans, and so you know, we set strategy. Recommendation would be that, hey, that doesn't change all that often, but there are times when it needs to change. Maybe the price of oil will drop from 100 and something to 40 something, and things need to change. That could happen someday. So we need to implement modified action plans and develop that competency. Then we need a measurement system that can respond to rapid or unexpected changes. Healthcare, great example, has had to go through some changes in the last several years. So that measurement system, what we used to measure, maybe isn't as important as it is as what we need to measure today. And so you typically start to see those things happen. If you're doing this stuff already, great. Don't look now what your Baldrige is showing, because that's exactly what Baldrige will want you to do at this level. Maybe we're thinking past just contributing to our communities. Maybe we're thinking past the impacts, but we're really considering societal well-being and benefit as part of our strategy. You know, it's a higher level for us. You know, this is past contributing to United Way. This is how do we consider the society's well-being in what we're doing? And so maybe here's where you start to see a lot of the you could have some recycling. Maybe you rethink the way you do your operations so that you don't have as much waste. You're using recyclable type stuff. You know, maybe you rethink you know, what you're doing to develop a student and putting that student out in society. But you're considering that societal well-being as part of your strategy, not just something else that you do. Here is where, at the highest level, I think your strategy development process. You know, I mean, you are really at your core starting to stimulate and incorporate innovation. You're starting to manage work processes for innovation. And what does that mean? Well, it just means that you're creating an environment for that. So how does innovation happen? I don't know. Maybe it's just like lightning striking, but innovation happens in organizations, and organizations that do it purposefully are the ones that exist at this level, and so they manage it for that. They allow mistakes to happen. We were doing a workshop the other day, and somebody said, hey, we're afraid to make mistakes, and if you're afraid to make mistakes, then you're afraid to innovate, because innovation probably happens in an environment of mistakes. Certainly did for Thomas Edison, if you know that story. Probably did for Steve Jobs and Apple, among all the other great innovators that you know of. And so at this level, you're incorporating innovation into your strategy, into the way you manage your work. You're allowing for that innovation to take place. You're encouraging that innovation. You're creating a culture where innovation can happen. And then you're embedding learning in the way your organization operates. It's not so much that you're reviewing data information. It's that just as part of the way you work, you've got learning embedded in there. No better picture of that than Toyota. I think Toyota is probably the standard for me in terms of really embedding learning in their operating system of how they work. I mean, stopping to figure, analyzing a problem, really getting to the core of that problem when it happens, not after we slow down after the busy season, but when it happens. So embedding learning in the way an organization operates. So this may be the level at which somebody says, well, I don't do Baldrige because they don't do these things. And that's a fair statement. But what they're saying is they haven't reached the level of innovation. They haven't reached that level on a maturity pyramid here. But if you do these things, if these things look familiar to you, because you see these happen in your organizations, don't look now, but your Baldrige is showing, because you see these things happen in your organization, you're in the top 1% of all organizations. You're probably less than 1%. That's how good you are at this point. So don't look now, but your Baldrige is showing. So I got a little lengthy right there, I think, but we covered quite a bit. Now I'm going to hopefully take this off mute. If you have any questions, something I covered too quickly, you want me to go back and, hey, Cary, what do you mean by that? Or can we dig into that a little bit deeper? And see what you have to think. So any questions?
No, innovative.
Please show the innovation slide. Thank you so much. All right. So the innovation slide right here. Questions about the innovation slide? This is all we're going to post this out on our YouTube channel. Hopefully this will be available on our YouTube channel. You'll be able to pick this up later on if you want to see this later on. I recommend taking this home, having the family watch it. It'll be good entertainment for them. All right, questions? All right, well, listen, thanks for sitting in with me today. Hopefully it's been a great session for you. I want to mention a couple other things. We've got some additional learning opportunities coming up, a couple of lunch and learns coming up in October. One's going to be the essentials to pack on the road to excellence. We're gonna lay out probably about a half dozen things that you ought to have in your toolkit if you're on this journey to excellence. I think those are the things that are going to accelerate you. Next one's going to be, we're going to cover the criteria, core values. We got a workshop coming up. Lori Smith from Integris Health Systems is going to do A3 problem solving. That's kind of the Toyota way problem solving. That's going to be the 20th in Oklahoma City. And don't forget, November conference, Celebrate Excellence in Oklahoma with us down at the Skirvin Hilton on November 19th. You can see all that stuff on our Facebook page. So jump on Facebook and like us there, and then you get all those great updates there. So anyway, thanks for joining us. Got any questions? I'm going to send out a survey later on. I appreciate you taking about 15 seconds and filling out that survey, letting us know how we can do this better next time. So thanks for the time today, and hopefully I will talk to you soon. Bye now.